Hello, hello. It's good to see you all. Thank you, Aranel, for speaking so highly. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Hello, Aaron, my studious mod. Hello, Hicks. Hello, Lord. Hello, Rio. It's good to see you all. Skunk, hello to you too. Thank you for coming back in. It's good to see you again. I don't know about... Ooh, Pokemon. I don't know about all of you, but it's been a weekend. So Lord, in order to get started, you're going to want to type !Poke start, and you will get your first Pokemon and a few Pokeballs to use to throw towards the next. So there you go. You got a Turtwig. Don't ask me what a Turtwig is. I have no idea. But yes, I hope everyone's had a great weekend. I'm not gonna lie, I am tired today. I am exhausted. I volunteered to help out a friend of mine over the weekend. And so on Friday after work, I packed a quick bag, I shoved some food down my throat, and then I drove to his house, and then we left at 4 a.m. to then drive to Grand Rapids, Michigan, so he could buy a car. Then we ate some lunch, and then we turned around and drove all the way back. And I gotta tell you, that was a long day. So, and then I thought I'd sleep like a baby last night, but I didn't. I was waking up like a lot. So, it is what it is. So here we are. Not played since Emerald. Yeah, I never actually got into the Pokemon stuff until Twitch. And so I'm like, my 5-year-old probably knows more than me at this point. Yeah. So as you can see, I got a microphone, dedicated microphone. How is it sounding? How are the levels? Shorter stream, take care of your health. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, we are reading The War of the Worlds, so you know, it could get pretty intense, as you remember. And we're playing Stream Raiders, so you know, make sure you get your units down. So in case you need that link, there's the link again. Skunk's got a unit down. Aranel, I know I can count on you. I know you love this game. But yeah, so hopefully everyone's had a good weekend. Hopefully everyone's been doing well. Skunk placed an epic Warbeast. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the epic. As you can see, I've got the overlay up there now, which I didn't have before. It took me a minute to figure out technical stuff, but I got it. So I'm happy about that. Oh, and Christy, who we read from Friends for Life a couple streams ago, I'm trying to remember the name of the chocolate that she talked about in her book. But this morning I saw her and she came over to me and she's like, I have something for you. And she was holding this little brown paper bag, and I was like, no. Is that what I think it is? And she's like, yes, that's what you think it is. And sure enough, I have chilling in my fridge right now a bar of the imported chocolate that she had while in Germany. So at some point I'll take a quick pause so I can go get it, and then I'm gonna try it while I'm on stream, so you know what it's like. So that was super kind. I was floored by that generosity. So I can't wait. So 2 other things, or maybe 2. If you want to get in on the USG Discord, the link for it is right there. That's where you can chat with myself, Aaron, Jubilee, Pipe, Jeff, Witch. I mean, there's a whole bunch of us in there. It's our little home away from home when we all want to talk about books and stuff. And of course, we have our next book club coming up September 25th, 6 p.m. Central. We're gonna discuss The Giver. I finished it, I don't know, 4 or 5 nights ago, I think it was. I forget. Boy, that book. It's a great book. The ending crippled me, though. I'll tell you that much. So, definitely put that on your calendar so that you can hear more. And then, if that weren't enough, if you are a subscriber, Stunt Mama's man, hey, what's happening, sir? Good to see you. If you are a subscriber to me, very similar to what Aaron's doing in his stream, the next book that we do for our book club, I'm going to be reading it in Discord at a certain time and just doing an open mic. We'll read some chapters, we'll talk about it, just kind of very laid back. I won't have all the fancy green screen stuff going on. It'll be very much more personable, hopefully. And I try and make this personable as well. But Gotcha Unlocked playing Gas Station Simulator. They're coming out with all kinds of simulators now. That's funny. Gas Station Simulator. Alright. I'll take 10 gallons, please, on pump number 4. I shall be looking here while I work. No worries. Go get that bacon. Enjoy that with your zombie apocalypse. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. Book club stuff, subscriber only Discord stuff. So I hope you'll enjoy that. It is something that I'm trying to do to say thank you for those of you who are subscribed to me, because I appreciate it, and I don't want to just say that on stream and then say see you later and then go do my thing. I want to show that to you in other ways. So with that being said, we have a book to read. You will also see in my Discord a new channel that I have nicknamed, as soon as I remember what I nicknamed it, because it's really, really recent, Reading Recap. So I put a, thank you, Aaron. I put a quick blurb in Reading Recap already about the first 8 chapters that we have read from the War of the Worlds. And after today's stream, I will be doing the same again for whatever chapters we get through today. So if you're ever curious about what we have read, it's a very vague recap, but it's just a little something to get you caught up. All right. Good idea. Thank you. Yes, I stole the idea from somebody else. So, the Recreational Rogue, who's also part of the USG, she does it on stream. So, like today, she would recap the first 8 chapters live, and I just decided instead of doing that, I would just write it down. That way, hopefully, I wouldn't forget. So, all right. So today we are getting started with chapter 9. It's called The Fighting Begins. Saturday lives in my memory as a day of suspense. It was a day of lassitude too, hot and close with, I am told, a rapidly fluctuating barometer. I had slept but little, though my wife had succeeded in sleeping, and I rose early. I went into my garden before breakfast and stood listening, but towards the common there was nothing stirring but a lark. The milkman came as usual. I heard the rattle of his chariot, and I went round to the side gate to ask the latest news. He told me that during the night the Martians had been surrounded by troops, and that guns were expected. Then, a familiar, reassuring note, I heard a train running towards Woking. "They aren't to be killed," said the milkman. If that can possibly be avoided. I saw my neighbor gardening, chatted with him for a time, and then strolled in to breakfast. It was a most unexceptional morning. My neighbor was of opinion that the troops would be able to capture or to destroy the Martians during the day. "It's a pity they make themselves so unapproachable," he said. "It would be curious to know how they live on another planet. We might learn a thing or two." He came up to the fence and extended a handful of strawberries, for his gardening was as generous as it was enthusiastic. At the time, he told me that the burning of the pine woods about the Byfleet golf links. "They say," said he, "that there's another of those blessed things fallen there. Number 2. But one's enough, surely. This lot'll cost the insurance people a pretty penny before anything's settled." He laughed with an air of the greatest good humor as he said this. The woods, he said, were still burning, and pointed out a haze of smoke to me. "They will be hot underfoot for days, on account of the thick soil and pine needles and turf," he said, and then grew serious over poor Ogivy. After breakfast, instead of working, I decided to walk down towards the common. Under the railway bridge, I found a group of soldiers, sappers, I think, men in small round caps, dirty red jackets unbuttoned and showing their blue shirts, dark trousers, and boots coming to the calf. They told me no one was allowed over the canal, and looking along the road towards the bridge, I saw one of the Cardigan men standing sentinel there. I talked with these soldiers for a time. I told them of my sight of the Martians on the previous evening. None of them had seen the Martians, and they had but the vaguest idea of them, so that they piled me with questions. 8 are coming, 10 rockets, that's right. They said that they did not know who had authorized the movements of the troops. Their idea was that a dispute had arisen at the Horse Guards. The ordinary sapper is a great deal better educated than a common soldier, and they discussed the peculiar conditions of the possible fight with some acuteness. I described the heat ray to them, and they began to argue among themselves. "Crawl up under cover and rush 'em, say I," said one. "Get said another. "What's cover against this here, eh? Sticks to cook you. What you gotta do is go as near as the ground and let us, and then drive a trench." "Blow your trenches. You always want trenches. You ought to have brought a rabbit, Snippy." "Ain't they got any necks, then?" said a third, abruptly, a little contemplative, dark man smoking a pipe. I repeated my description. "Octopuses," said he. "That's what I calls 'em. Talk about fishes and men. Fishes are fishes is this time. It ain't no murder-killing beast like that," said the first speaker. "Why not shell the darn things straight off and finish 'em?" said the dark man. "You can't tell what they might do." "Where's your shells?" said the first speaker. "There ain't no time. Do it in a rush. That's my tip. And do it once." So they discussed it. After a while, I left them and went on to the railway station to get as many morning papers as I could. But while I not wearied the reader with a description of that long morning and of the long afternoon, I did not succeed in getting a glimpse of the common, for even Horsell and Chobham Church towers were in the hands of the military authorities. The soldiers I addressed didn't know anything. The officers were mysterious as well as busy. I found people in the town quite secure again in the presence of the military, and I heard for the first time from Marshall, the tobacconist, that his son was among the dead of the common. The soldiers had made the people on the outskirts of Horsell lock up and leave their houses. I got back to lunch about 2, very tired, for, as I have said, the day was extremely hot and dull, and in order to refresh myself, I took a cold bath in the afternoon. About 4:30, I went up to the railway station to get an evening paper, for the morning papers had contained only a very inaccurate description of the killing of Stent, Henderson, Ogilvy, and others. But there was a little I still didn't know. The Martians did not show an inch of themselves. They seemed busy in their pit, and there was a sound of hammering and almost continuous streamer of smoke. Apparently, they were busy getting ready for a struggle. Fresh attempts had been made to signal, but without success, was the stereotyped formula of the papers. It itched my eye. A sapper told me it was done by a man in a ditch with a flag on a long pole. The Martians took as much notice of such advances as we showed of the lowing of a cow. I must confess, the sight of all the arraignment, all this preparation greatly excited me. My imagination became belligerent and defeated the invaders in a dozen striking ways. Something of my schoolboy dreams of battle and heroism came back. It hardly seemed a fair fight to me at the time. They seemed very helpless in that pit of theirs. About 3 o'clock, there began the thud of a gun at measured intervals from Chertsey and Addleston. I learned that the smoldering pine wood into which the second cylinder had fallen was being shelled, in hope of destroying that object before it opened. It was only about 5, however, that a field gun reached Chobham for use against the first body of Martians. About 6 in the evening, as I sat at tea with my wife in the summer house, talking vigorously about the battle that was lowering upon us, I heard a muffled detonation from the common, and immediately after a gust of firing. Close on the heels of that came a violent, rattling crash quite close to us that shook the ground, and, starting out upon the lawn, I saw the tops of the trees about the Oriental College burst into smoke-red flame, and the tower of the little church beside it slide down into ruin. The pinnacle of the mosque had vanished, and the roof of the line of the college itself looked as if a 100-ton gun had been at work upon it. One of our chimneys cracked, as if a shot had hit it, flew, and a piece of it came clattering down the tiles that made a heap of broken red fragments upon the flower bed by my study window. I and my wife stood amazed. Then I realized that the crest of Maybury Hill must be within range of the Martians' heat ray, now that the college was cleared out of the way. At that I gripped my wife's arm, and without ceremony ran her into the road. Then I fetched out the servant, telling her I would go upstairs myself for the box she was clamoring for. "We can't possibly stay here," I said. As I spoke, the firing reopened for a moment upon the common. "But where are we to go?" said my wife in terror. I thought, perplexed. Then I remembered her cousins in Leatherhead. "Leatherhead!" I shouted above the sudden noise. She looked away from me downhill. The people were coming out of their houses astonished. "How do we get to Leatherhead?" she said. Down the hill I saw a bevy of hussars ride under the railway bridge. 3 galloped through the open gates of the Oriental College. 2 others dismounted and began running from house to house. The sun shining through the smoke that drove up from the tops of the trees seemed blood-red, and threw an unfamiliar lurid light upon everything. "Stop here." And said I, "You are safe here," and I started off at once for the Spotted Dog, for I knew the landlord had a horse and a dog-cart. I ran, for I perceived that in a moment everyone upon this side of the hill would be moving. I found him in his bar, quite unaware of what was going on behind his house. A man stood with his back to me, talking to him. "I must have £1," said the landlord, "and I've no one to drive it." "I'll give you 2, said I over the stranger's shoulder. "What for?" "And I'll bring it back by midnight," I said. "Lord," said the landlord, "what's the hurry? I'm selling my bit of a pig. £2, you bring it right back. What's going on now?" I explained hastily that I had to leave my home, and so secured the dog cart. At the time, it did not seem to me nearly so urgent that the landlord should leave this. I took care to have the cart there, and then drove it off down the road, and, leaving it in charge of my wife and servant, rushed into my house and packed a few valuables, such plate as we had, and so forth. The beech trees below the house were burning while I did this, and the palings up the road glowed red. While I was occupied in this way, one of the dismounted hussars came running up. He was going from house to house, warning people to leave. He was going on, and as I came up to my front door, lugging my treasures done up in a tablecloth, I shouted after him, "What news?" He turned, stared, bawled something out about crawling out in a thing like a dish cover, and ran on to the gate of the house at the crest. Oh, thank you, Hicks. A sudden whirl of black smoke driving across the road hid him from a moment. Excuse me, I'm going to start that again. A sudden whirl of black smoke driving across the road hid him for a moment. I ran to my neighbor's door and rapped to satisfy myself of what I already knew, that his wife had gone to London with him and locked up their house. I went in again, according to my promise, to get the servant's box, lugged it out, clapped it beside her on the tail of the dog cart, and then caught the reins and jumped into the driver's seat beside my wife. In another moment, we were clear of the smoke and noise, and spanking down the opposite slope of Maybury Hill towards Old Woking. In front was a quiet, sunny landscape, a wheat field ahead of either side of the road, and the Maybury Inn with its swinging sign. I saw the doctor's cart ahead of me. At the bottom of the hill, I turned my head to look at the hillside I was leaving. Thick streamers of black smoke shot with threads of red fire were driving up into the still air and throwing dark shadows upon the green tree tops eastward. The smoke was already extended far away to the east and west, to the Byfleet pine woods eastward and to the Woking on the west. The road was dotted with people running towards us, and very faint now, but very distinct through the hot, quiet air. One heard the whir of a machine gun that was presently stilled, and an intermittent cracking of rifles. Apparently the Martians were setting fire to everything within range of their heat ray. I am not an expert driver, and I had immediately to turn my attention to the horse. When I looked back again, the second hill had hidden the black smoke. I slashed the horse with the whip and gave him a loose rein until Woking and Sen lay between us and that quivering tumult. I overtook and passed the doctor between Woking and Send. And that is chapter 9. So we kind of went from this mysterious, I wonder what might happen, to, holy crap, we gotta go. They figured out how to get out of their pit, and they're pretty mad, basically, is what it sounds like. So I imagine things are only going to get a lot worse. And in perfect timing, we can do Stream Raiders. Let's see if I can actually get this thing to show up. Let's see. Of course not. Nope, I didn't want to go there. Gosh darn it. Hold on. I had downloaded the app for it onto my desktop, and I tried to display that in a window capture, but of course it didn't work. So now I'm having to try and do it through the browser again, and even that's giving me problems. I'm telling you, OBS isn't always as good as they make it sound to be. Alright, I'll tell you what, while that's loading, I will do the be right back thing, and I'll go grab that delicious, well, I hope, delicious chocolate from Germany. So, I shall return. Okay. Thank you for that brief intermission. View battlefield, excellent. Okay. Let me see if it's... No, it's not. Of course it's not. Alright, so I've got the game back up, so let me... Took me so long to load streamers on a phone browser that I could only place 2 troops for this battle. No, it's okay. Stream Raiders is super slow. But what's puzzling me is why it's not working properly. So, I'm going to just try this again. Because, gosh darn it. Why do you hate me? Okay. I don't know what's going on today. I'm having the best luck. Absolutely. Let's see if I can get... There we go. That's what I want. Close enough. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Let me just do this. Let's go curse some people. And yeah. Alright, we'll do that. Here we go. Good luck. Skunk's mighty war beast coming in hot. Why is everyone standing still? Don't stand still. You know, they had an update today. Or maybe it was yesterday for Stream Raiders. I'm telling you, I don't think they've got everything figured out yet. There's no reason we should just be standing there like statues. This is not cool. Oh, now we move. Okay. Jeez. That was tough. Either way, I think we got this. There we go. Good job, everybody. Good job. Redhead, you get the scrolls. Whoever Redhead is, good job. I don't know who Redhead is, but that's fine. Way to go. Alright, so that was our mystery chest. So now we're on to our 4 skull. So let's hope. Keep our fingers crossed. This is going to be so great. I'm going to place an archer. But we are definitely going to need some rogues. We're going to need some tanks. And, yeah. Go for it. Go hog wild. Do your thing. Alright. You can probably hear the paper. Sorry if that's loud. Here's the little bag it came in. And this right here was what I was gifted today. I put it in the fridge so it could firm up a little bit. You like the sound? I do too, actually. I just couldn't tell if it was too much sound. Just cracking it open. And you can look what it shows on the inside. So this is the inside. Just little squares, little rectangles. Your cats know that sound. Bye, Hicks. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, it's awful. You guys would hate it. Yeah, don't get it. I'll set that over there. It's not quite as creamy as what I would say or reflect on as dairy milk from the UK. But it definitely it's like, if dairy milk in the UK was 50% creamy, this is like 45% creamy. Like it's just below it. But it tastes really good. I have a feeling it's also better not refrigerated and just at room temperature, as long as your room isn't like 80 degrees. So yes, I approve. And I will be finishing that another time. Hopefully slowly, so I can savor the flavor. Alright. Excellent. We're doing good. Thank you guys for placing troops. Love it. Alright, so now we're moving on to Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is titled In the Storm, which, I'm here. What did I miss? Hello, Queen. Well, you're missing Stream Raiders for one, so let's get you that link, because we're on a, it's not a boss battle, but it is a 4 skull, and there's lots of baddies to go beat up. So we just finished our first chapter for the day, which is chapter 9. The fighting begins. In a nutshell, basically everything was calm the night before. Soldiers are here. They found the second site where the other landing happened, and the military has tried their best to start attacking, basically. And now there's a lot more stuff on fire, more heat rays, and I think our new alien friends have dug their way out of their pit, and so all hell's breaking loose. And that's kind of where we left it on the end of that chapter. So we're now going to start reading chapter 10. So here we go. Alright, gonna place my units. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome. Leatherhead is about 12 miles from Mayberry Hill. The scent of hay was in the air through the lush meadows beyond Pryford, and the hedges of either side were sweet and gay with multitudes of dog roses. The heavy firing that had broken out while we were driving down Mayberry Hill ceased as abruptly as it began, leaving the evening very peaceful and still. We got to Leatherhead without misadventure about 9 o'clock, and the horse had an hour's rest while I took supper with my cousins and commended my wife to their care. David, hello. Atkinson worked all morning, now laying down, gonna listen and lurk. Fantastic, sir. Do enjoy. And if you want, certainly place a stream rate or a unit, if you wish. My wife was curiously silent throughout the drive, and seemed oppressed with forebodings of evil. I talked to her reassuringly, pointed out that Martians were tied to the pit by sheer heaviness, and at the utmost could but crawl a little out of it, but she answered only in monosyllables. Had it not been for my promise to the innkeeper, she would, I think, have urged me to stay in Leatherhead that night. Would that I had. Her face, I remember, was very white as we parted. For my own part, I had been feverishly excited all day. Something very like the war fever that occasionally runs through a civilized community had got into my blood and in my heart, as I was not so very sorry that I had to return to Mayberry that night. I was even afraid that the last fusillade I had heard might mean the extermination of our invaders from Mars. Not likely. I can best express my state of mind by saying that I wanted to be in at the death. Alright then. This guy's hardcore. It was nearly 11 when I started to return. The night was unexpectedly dark. To me, walking out of the lighted passage of my cousin's house, it seemed indeed black, and it was as hot and close as the day. Overhead the clouds were driving fast, albeit not a breath stirred the shrubs about us. My cousin's man lit both lamps. Happily, I knew the road intimately. My wife stood in the light of the doorway and watched me until I jumped up into the dog cart. Then, abruptly, she turned and went in, leaving my cousins side by side, wishing me good hap. I was a little depressed at first with the contagion of my wife's fears, but very soon my thoughts reverted to the Martians. At that time I was absolutely in the dark as to the course of the evening's fighting. I did not know even the circumstances that had precipitated the conflicts. As I came through Occam, for that was the way I returned, and not through Send and Old Woking, I saw along the western horizon a blood-red glow, which, as I drew nearer, crept slowly up the sky. The driving clouds of the gathering thunderstorm mingled there with masses of black and red smoke. Ripley Street was deserted, and except for a lighted window or so, the village showed not a sign of life. But I narrowly escaped an accident at the corner of the road to Pryford, where the knot of people stood with their backs to me. They said nothing to me as I passed. I do not know what they knew of the things happening beyond the hill, nor do I know if the silent houses I passed on my way were sleeping securely, or deserted and empty, or harassed and watching against terror of the night. From Ripley until I came through Pryford, I was in the valley of the Wey, That's W-E-Y. And the red glare was hidden from me. As I ascended the little hill beyond Pryford Church, the glare came into view again, and the trees about me shivered with the first intimation of the storm that was upon me. Then I heard midnight pealing out from Pryford Church behind me, and then came the silhouette of Maybury Hill, with its treetops and roofs black and sharp against the red. Even as I beheld, this lurid green glare lit the road about me and showed the distant woods towards Addlestone. I felt a tug at the reins. I saw that the driving clouds had been pierced, as it were a thread of green fire suddenly lighting their confusion and falling into the field to my left. It was the third falling star. Oh, snap. Close on its apparition, and blindingly violet by contrast, danced out the first lightning of the gathering storm, and the thunder burst like a rocket overhead. The horse took the bit between his teeth and bolted. A moderate incline runs towards the foot of Maybury Hill, and down this we clattered. Once the lightning had begun, it went on as in rapid a succession of flashes I had ever seen. The thunderclaps treading one on the heels of another with a strange crackling accompaniment sounded more like the working of a gigantic electric machine than the usual detonating reverberations. The flickering light was blinding and confusing, and a thin hail smote gustily at my face as I drove down the slope. Kibo, hello. Did we get a new mic? Yes, we did. I hope it sounds okay. At first, I regarded little but the road before me, and then abruptly my attention was arrested by something that was moving rapidly down the opposite slope of Maybury Hill. At first, I took it for the wet roof of a house, but one flash following another showed it to be in a swift, rolling movement. It was an elusive vision, a moment of bewildering darkness, and then, in a flash like daylight, the red masses of the orphanage near the crest of the hill, the green tops of the pine trees, and this problematical object came out clear and sharp and bright. Sounds great. Awesome. Thank you. And this thing I saw, how can I describe it? A monstrous tripod, higher than many houses, striding over the young pine trees and smashing them aside in its career. A walking engine of glittering metal, striding now across the heather. Articulate ropes of steel dangling from it, and the clattering tumult of its passage mingling with the riot of the thunder. A flash, and it came out vividly, heeling over one way with its 2 feet in the air, to vanish and reappear almost instantly as it seemed with the next flash, 100 yards nearer. Can you imagine a milking stool tilted and bowled violently along the ground? That was the impression those instant flashes gave. But instead of a milking stool, imagine it a great body of machinery on a tripod stand. Oh, snap. Then suddenly the trees in the pine wood ahead of me were parted, as brittle reeds are parted by a man thrusting through them. They were snapped off and driven headlong, and a second huge tripod appeared, rushing, as it seemed, headlong towards me. And I was galloping hard to meet it. At the sight of the second monster, my nerve went altogether. Not stopping to look again, I wrenched the horse's head hard around to the right, and in another movement the dog cart had heeled over upon the horse. The shaft smashed noisily, and I was flung sideways and fell heavily into a shallow pool of water. And he died. That's the end. No, I'm just kidding. I crawled out almost immediately and crouched, my feet still in the water, under a clump of firs. The horse lay motionless. His neck was broken, poor brute. And by the lightning flashes I saw the black bulk of the overturned dog cart and the silhouette of the wheels still spinning slowly. In another moment, the colossal mechanism went striding by me and passed uphill towards Pryford. Can you imagine how freaking scary that would have been? I mean, good grief. Ugh. Seen nearer, the thing was incredibly strange, for it was no mere incessant machine driving on its way. Machine it was, with a ringing metallic pace and long, flexible, glittering tentacles, one of which gripped a young pine tree, swinging and rattling about its strange body. It picked its road as it went striding along, and the brazen hood that surmounted it moved to and fro with an inevitable suggestion of a head looking about. Behind the main body was a huge mass of white metal like a gigantic fisherman's basket, and puffs of green smoke squirted out from the joints of the limbs as the monster swept by me. And in an instant, it was gone. So much I saw then, all vaguely for the flickering of the lightning, in blinding highlights and dense black shadows. As it passed, it set up an exultant, deafening howl that drowned the thunder. Alloo! Alloo! And in another minute, it was with its companion, half a mile away, stooping over something in the field. I have no doubt... I almost lost my place there. I have no doubt this thing in the field was the third of the 10 cylinders that had fired at us from Mars. For some minutes I lay there in the rain and darkness watching. By the intermittent light, these monsters being of metal moving about the distance over the hedge tops. A thin hail was now beginning, and as it came and went, their figures grew misty, and then flashed into clearness again. Now and then came a gap in the lightning, and the night swallowed them up. I was soaked with hail above, the puddle water below. I'm going to start that again. That didn't make sense. I was soaked with hail above and puddle water below. It was some time before my blank astonishment would let me struggle up the bank to a drier position, or think at all of my imminent peril. Whew, words today. Hard. So hard. Not far from me was a little one-room squatter's hut of wood, surrounded by a patch of potato garden. I struggled to my feet at last, and, crouching and making use of every chance of cover, I made a run for this. I hammered at the door, but I could not make the people hear, if there were any people inside. And after a time, I desisted, and, availing myself of a ditch for the greater part of the way, succeeding in crawling unobserved by these monstrous machines into the pine woods towards Maybury. It's a thing, Queen, you know? It's a thing. Under cover of this, I pushed on, wet and shivering now, towards my own house. I walked among the trees, trying to find the footpath. It was very dark indeed in the wood, for the lightning was now becoming infrequent, and the hail, which was pouring down in a torrent, fell in columns through the gaps in the heavy foliage. If I had fully realized the meaning of all things I had seen, I should have immediately worked my way through Byfleet to Street Cobham, and so gone back to rejoin my wife at Leatherhead. But that night, the strangest of things about me and my physical wretchedness prevented me, for I was bruised, weary, wet to the skin, deafened and blinded by the storm. I had a vague idea of going on to my own house, and that was as much motive as I had. I staggered through the trees, fell into a ditch, and bruised my knees against a plank, and finally splashed out into the lane that ran down the College Arms. I say splash, for the storm water was sweeping the sand down the hill in a muddy torrent. There in the darkness, a man blundered into me and sent me reeling back. He gave a cry of terror, sprang sideways, and rushed on before I could gather my wits sufficiently to speak to him. So heavy was the stress of the storm just at this place that I had the hardest task to win my way up the hill, I went close up to the fence on the left and worked my way along its palings. Near the top, I stumbled upon something soft, and by a flash of lightning saw between my feet a heap of black broadcloth and a pair of boots. Before I could distinguish clearly how the man lay, the flicker of light had passed. I stood over him, waiting for the next flash. When it came, I saw he was a sturdy man, cheaply but not shabbily dressed. His head was bent under his body as he lay crumpled up close to the fence, as though he had been flung violently against it. Overcoming the repugnance natural to one who had never before touched a dead body, I stooped and turned him over to feel his heart. He was quite dead. Apparently his neck had been broken. The lightning flashed for a third time, and his face leaped up upon me. I sprang to my feet. It was the landlord of the Spotted Dog, whose conveyance I had taken. I stepped over him gingerly and pushed on upon the hill. I made my way by the police station and the College Arms towards my own house. Nothing was burning on the hillside, though from the common there still came a red glare and a rolling tumult of ruddy smoke beating up against the drenching hail. So far as I could see by the flashes, the houses about me were mostly uninjured. By the College Arms, a dark heap lay in the road. Down the road towards Maybury Bridge there were voices and the sound of feet, but I had not the courage to shout or go to them. I let myself in with my latchkey, closed, locked, and bolted the door, staggered to the foot of the staircase, and sat down. My imagination was full of those striding metallic monsters, of the dead body smashed against the fence. I crouched at the foot of the staircase, with my back to the wall, shivering violently. That's chapter 10. Wow. That's a major turn of events for, well, the book itself, but also for our main guy here. He's, dropped off his wife so that she could be safe, but has felt this adrenaline of the battlefield, so to speak. Obviously ill-advised, and to much of his wife's disagreement, he travels back expecting to just find more of the same, and instead there's a massive storm, and ungodly, now monstrous-sized mechanical creatures that make the other guys that were firing heat rays look like child's play. And he's now like, holy crap, what do I do? I will go to my house, because I think when you're in a state of panic and fear, you go to the one place you're supposed to feel the safest. And for him, in that moment, it wasn't his wife, because it was too far. It was his house. And that's why when he went in, he locked and bolted the door. He didn't just lock the door, he didn't just bolt the door, he did both. He wanted to feel safe. So, it's very interesting. It's a very good, very scary book so far. Yeah, I think this is really cool. It's a shame they hadn't made Tom Cruise's version of this movie a little bit closer to this. I hope everyone's doing well. Again, just in case you hadn't heard me talk about it already, our book club is coming up. Definitely mark that on your calendar as we discuss The Giver. Fantastic book. My Discord is here for anyone, but especially those that are subbed, as I will be doing our next book club book reading in there at some point once we figure out what the book is. We haven't quite nailed that down yet. Hopefully they tried to make a movie from this again, closer to the book. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. I have a good visual of the towering monsters based off of Tom Cruise's version. I think they did a pretty good job of kind of reflecting the book there. But otherwise, yeah, it would be pretty cool to see all this happen, and then actually base it in the UK instead of United States. But you know, American movies and all. What are you gonna do? Oh, and of course, not only my Discord, but the USG Discord. Feel free to hang out in there if you like. That's where you can catch all of us USG folks. And if you're curious who they are, I have a panel down below. Or you can type in exclamation and then any of those names right there, and you will get their links so that you can go drop a follow on their channels, and then when they go live, you can go visit them and chat with them. I think everyone except maybe Pipe is reading The Giver with us soon, so if you just mention my name or that you came from here, something like that, you should be able to connect with them. They'll understand. Alright, good job guys with those units. Thank you so much. It should be an intense battle when we get there. But we're not quite ready yet. And we have another chapter to read. We won't make it through the entire chapter before Stream Raiders is ready, so I will read to a point which seems appropriate to break, and then we'll do the battle, and then we'll keep going. So chapter 11 is called At the Window. Not sure what that means yet. Let's find out. As soon as I yawn. Long weekend. Oh. I have already said that my storms of emotion have a trick of exhausting themselves. After a time, I discovered that I was cold and wet, and with the pools of water about me on the stair carpet. I got up, almost mechanically, went into the dining room and drank some whiskey, and then I was moved to change my clothes. Seems like a good order of events. After I had done that, I went upstairs to my study, but why I did so, I do not know. The window of my study looks over the trees and the railway towards Horsell Commons. In the hurry of our departure, this window had been left open. The passage was dark, and by contrast with the picture the window frame enclosed, the side of the room seemed impenetrably dark. I stopped short in the doorway. The thunderstorm had passed. The towers of the Oriental College and the pine trees about it had gone, and very far away, lit by a vivid red glare, the common about the sandpits was visible. Across the light, huge black shapes, grotesque and strange, moved busily to and fro. It seemed indeed as if the whole country in that direction was on fire. A broad hillside set with minute tongues of flame, swaying and writhing with the gusts of the dying storm, and throwing a red reflection upon the clouds scud above. Every now and then, a haze of smoke from some nearer Every now and then, a haze of smoke from some nearer conflagration drove across the window and hid the Martian shapes. I could not see what they were doing, nor the clear form of them, nor recognize the black objects they were busied upon. Neither could I see the nearer fire, though the reflections of it danced on the wall and ceiling of the study. A sharp, resinous tang of burning was in the air. I closed the door noisily and crept towards the window. As I did so, the view opened out until, on the one hand, it reached to the houses about Woking Station, and on the other to the charred and blackened pine woods of Byfleet Byfleet. There was a light down below on the hill, on the railway near the arch, and several of the houses along the Maybury Road and the streets near the station were glowing ruins. The light upon the railway puzzled me at first. There were a black heap and a vivid glare, and to the right of that a row of yellow oblongs. Then I perceived this was a wrecked train. And there's that battle, so we'll finish up here in a moment. Hey Matt, welcome in. Then I perceived this was a wrecked train, the foreparts smashed and on fire, the hinder carriages still upon the rails. Alright, so that is the end of that paragraph. So I will switch us over. And let's see. I really need to get more spells. But this is what we got. So I'm going to curse this group right here. Good luck. Here we go. Or at least we're moving this time. That's a bonus. Well, they're dying pretty quick. 80 enemies left. We have 24. 23. We're splitting up a little bit. Okay. Go get him, skunk. It's looking pretty good. Enemies are dwindling. Archers are doing a fantastic job. Okay, the top side's clear. Oh yeah. It's all over. Queen with 45 kills and 26 assists. Just dominating. And Skunk with a roaring 16 and 15. I killed 2. Alright. Skunk and Dog Poop since 2003. Both get gold. Good job. Well done. And of course, we have another 4-skull adventure ahead of us. So let's not waste too much time. This battlefield looks much nicer. I'm gonna put down a warrior right here. I wouldn't put anyone too far back, so if we can just take up this line right here, I think that would be perfect. Whew. Good job on that battle. That's quite a name, it sure is. You don't think you've ever killed that many? Well, it's easy when you're on a low captain like me. A low level captain. Dominated. Hoorah. Alright. Queen and Dog Poop are on it. Good job. Dominated Skunk with the matte face. Love it. Fantastic. Alright. I'll read give some of my best units. I appreciate that. Alright, all recording finished. Now I can sit back and listen. Well, good job, sir. Actually, since we're taking this quick moment, and since you're back, both, well, you can fight amongst yourselves since Matt's here as well, and you're also a mod. Can you do some shout-outs, please, based on who we have in our users list? There's some fantastic people in here that we need to make sure everyone knows about. I will do Stunt Mama, since Stunt Mama's man is chilling in the background listening. But I want to make sure that she gets recognized, because she is such a fun person to be around. But yeah, if you don't mind shouting out some folks, we got Queen, we got Matt, we got Aaron. We've got RNL. We got to get RNL to affiliate one way or another. We got David Air on the air. So, some good people in here. Thank you so much. Is there a good way to know who streams for shoutouts? I'm a mod noob. I will tell you the list, Sir Matt. You can do shoutouts for yourselves, of course, please. Rio is in here. Rio Wanda, she's my VIP. RNL, we already got. David Air on the Air is another one to shout out. Queen can be shouted out. We gotta get you to affiliate, RNL, okay? Okay. Yep, Cabo as well. Sea of Thieves. That's a fun game to watch, by the way, Sea of Thieves. That's, I enjoy watching that one. It's so funny. Alright, back to business. I'm gonna read the last line that ended our paragraph, and then I will just carry on. Then I perceived this was a wrecked train, the forepart smashed and on fire, the hinder carriages still upon the rails. Between these three main centers of light, the houses, the train, and the burning country towards Chobham, stretched irregular patches of dark country, broken here and there by intervals of dimly glowing and smoking ground. It was the strangest spectacle, that black expanse set with fire. It reminded me more than anything else of the potteries at night. At first I could distinguish no people at all, though I peered intently for them. Late, I saw against the light of Woking Station a number of black figures hurrying one after the other across the line. And this was the little world in which I had been living securely for years, this fiery chaos. What had happened in the last 7 hours I still did not know, nor did I know, though I was beginning to guess, the relation between these mechanical colossi and the sluggish lumps I had seen disgorged from the cylinders. With a queer feeling of impersonal interest, I turned my desk chair to the window, sat down, and stared at the blackened country, and particularly at the three gigantic black things that were going to and fro in the glare about the sandpits. They seemed amazingly busy. Yes, as Aaron said, if you're in here and you're a streamer and we haven't shouted you out, say something. Do not be shy. I'm not one of those people that, doesn't allow that kind of thing. This is a community platform, so in community we shall be. I began to ask myself what they could be. Were they intelligent mechanisms? Such a thing I felt was impossible. Or did a Martian sit within each ruling, directing, using much as a man's brain sits and rules in his body? I began to compare the things to human machines, to ask myself for the first time in my life how an ironclad or a steam engine would seem to an intelligent, lower animal. The storm had left the sky clear, and over the smoke of the burning land, the little fading pinpoint of Mars was dropping into the west. When a soldier came into my garden, I heard a slight scraping at the fence, and rousing myself from the lethargy that had fallen upon me, I looked down and saw him dimly, clambering over the palings. At the sight of another human being, my torpor passed, and I leaned out of the window eagerly. "Hist," said I in a whisper. He stopped astride of the fence in doubt. Then he came over and across the lawn to the corner of the house. He bent down and stepped softly. "Who's there?" he said, also whispering, standing under the window and peering up. "Where are you going?" I asked. "God knows." "Are you trying to hide?" "That's it." "Come into the house," I said. I went down, unfastened the door, and let him in, and locked the door again. I could not see his face. He was hatless, and his coat was unbuttoned. "My God," he said as I drew him in. What has happened? I asked. What hasn't? In the obscurity, I could see he made a gesture of despair. They wiped us out. Simply wiped us out, he repeated again and again. He followed me, almost mechanically, into the dining room. Take some whiskey, I said, pouring out a stiff dose. He drank it. Then abruptly he sat down before the table, put his head on his arms, and began to sob and weep like a little boy, in a perfect passion of emotion, while I, with a curious forgetfulness of my own recent despair, stood beside him, wondering. It was a long time before he could steady his nerves to answer my questions, and then he answered perplexingly and brokenly. He was a driver in the artillery, and had only come into action at about 7. At the time, firing was going on across the common, and it was said that the first party of Martians were crawling slowly towards their second cylinder under cover of a metal shield. Later, the shield staggered up on tripod legs and became the first of the fighting machines I had seen. The gun he drove had been unlimbered near Horsell in order to command the sandpits, and its arrival it was that had precipitated the action. As the limber gunners went to the rear, the horse trod in a rabbit hole and came down, throwing him into the depression of the ground. At the same moment, the gun exploded behind him. The ammunition blew up. There was fire all about him, and he found himself lying under a heap of charred dead men and dead horses. I lay still, he said, scared out of my wits, with the forequarter of a horse atop of me. We'd been wiped out, and the smell, good Lord, like burnt meat. I was hurt across the back by the fall of the horse, and there I had to lie until I felt better. Just like parade, it had been minutes before, then stumble, bang, swish. Wiped out, he said. He had hid under the dead horse for a long time, peeping out furtively across the common. The Cardigan men had tried a rush in skimmering order at the pit, simply to be swept out of existence. Then the monster had risen to its feet, and had begun to walk leisurely to and fro across the common among the few fugitives, with its head-like hood turning about, exactly like the head of a cowled human being. A kind of arm carried a complicated metallic case about which green flashes scintillated, and out of the funnel of this there smoked the heat ray. In a few minutes there was, so far the soldier could see, not a living thing left upon the common, and every bush and tree upon it was not already blackened skeleton was burning. The hussars had been on the road beyond the curvature of the ground, and he saw nothing of them. He heard the Maxims rattle for a time and then became still. The giant saved Woking Station and its cluster of houses until the last. Then, in a moment, the heat ray was brought to bear, and the town became a heap of fiery ruins. Then, the thing shut off the heat ray, and, turning its back upon the artillerymen, began to waddle away towards the smoldering pine woods that sheltered the second cylinder. As it did so, a second glittering titan built itself up out of the pit. The second monster followed the first, and at that the artillerymen began to crawl very cautiously across the hot heather ash towards Horsell. He managed to get alive into the ditch by the side of the road, and escaped to Woking. There his story became ejaculatory. The place was impassable. It seems there were a few people alive there, frantic for the most part, and many burned and scalded. He was turned aside by the fire, and hid among some almost scorching heaps of broken wall, as one of the Martian giants returned. He saw this one pursue a man, catch him up in one of its steely tentacles, and knock his head against the trunk of a pine tree. At last, After nightfall, the artillerymen made a rush for it and got over the railway embankment. Since then, he had been skulking along towards Maybury in hope of getting out of danger, Londonward. People were hiding in trenches and cellars, and many of the survivors had made off towards Woking village and Send. He had been consumed with thirst until he found one of the water mains near the railway arch smashed, and the water bubbling out like a spring upon the road. That was the story I got from him, bit by bit. He grew calmer telling me and trying to make me see the things he had seen. He had eaten no food since Monday, he told me early in the narrative, and I found some mutton and bread in the pantry and brought it into the room. We lit no lamp for fear of attracting the Martians, and ever and again our hands would touch upon bread or meat. As he talked, things about us came darkly out of the darkness, and the trampled bushes and broken rose trees outside the window grew distinct. It would seem that a number of men or animals had rushed across the lawn. I began to see his face, blackened and haggard, as no doubt mine was also. When he had finished eating, we went softly upstairs to my study, and I looked again out of the open window. In one night the valley had become a valley of ashes. The fires had dwindled now. Where flames had been, there were now streamers of smoke. But the countless ruins of shattered and gutted houses and blasted and blackened trees that the night had hidden stood out, now gaunt and terrible in the pitiless light of dawn. Yet here and there some objects had had luck of escape. A white railway signal here, the end of a greenhouse there, white and fresh amid the wreckage. Never before in the history of warfare had destruction been so indiscriminate and so universal. And shining with the growing light of the east, 3 of the metallic giants stood about the pit, their cowls rotating as though they were surveying the desolation they had made. It seemed to me that the pit had been enlarged, and ever and again puffs of vivid green vapor steamed up and out towards the brightening dawn. Steamed up, whirled, broke, and vanished. Beyond were the pillars of fire about Chobham. They became pillars of bloodshot smoke at the first touch of day. Not too much going on in chapter 11, but an introduction of more details from basically what I would call the luckiest soldier that was brought there. Arguably the only one left alive, by the sounds of it. I'm trying to imagine myself. I'm back. I think I missed a lot of destruction. You missed a lot of explanation of destruction that had already taken place. So, not much new destruction. But can you imagine yourself? I live in a ranch home, but regardless, you think about whatever time it is for you right now, and you look outside and everything is normal, calm, is as it would normally be. And then within 24 hours, it looks like a war zone. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine. I'm trying to imagine the neighborhood I live in, or the city in which I live, and to imagine the destruction. That would be truly petrifying. One day you're just doing your normal thing, and then the next, robot aliens. Quite the vivid imagination Mr. Wells had when he wrote this. It makes me wonder if he had had any opposition upon writing it, if anyone would have looked at him and went, "This will never sell." If only he knew. If only. Let's take a look at the battlefield. Awesome. Look at all those units. That's fantastic. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Lots of units. I feel like it was pretty full of commentary for the times. Indeed. Epic warrior. Another epic artillery. Fantastic. So here's an interesting chapter title for you for chapter 12. What I Saw of the Destruction of Weybridge and Shepperton. It almost sounds like a report, like as if he had surveyed a scene and then he's just giving us the details of what happened. Like, you can't get much more matter of fact with your title on that one. Epic vampire. Fantastic. Thanks, guys. I have a feeling this battle's already over. I'm not going to start it early, though, because I've seen other people do that, and it's been destruction. Excellent. Alright. I feel like we're making some good progress on this book. We're learning lots of fun things, so let's keep going. So again, chapter 12, What I Saw of the Destruction of Weybridge and Shepperton. As the dawn grew brighter, I'm 5 words in, and bleh. As the dawn grew brighter, we withdrew from the window from which we had watched the Martians, and went very quietly downstairs. The artilleryman agreed with me that the house was no place to stay in. He proposed and said to make his way Londonward, and thence rejoin the battery. No. Not no, jeez. That's what happens when you don't look at the next word in the sentence. It's not no, it's number. Number 12 of the horse artillery. My plan was to return at once to Leatherhead, and so greatly had the strength of the Martians impressed me that I had determined to take my wife to Newhaven, and go with her out the country forthwith. For I already perceived clearly that the country about London must inevitably be the sense of a disastrous struggle before such creatures as these could be destroyed. Smart, yeah. Between us and Leatherhead, however, lay the third cylinder. With its guarding giants, had I been alone, I think I should have taken my chance and struck across country. But the artilleryman dissuaded me. It's no kindness to the right sort of wife, he said, to make her a widow. And in the end I agreed to go with him, under cover of the woods, northward as far as the street Cobham before I parted with him. Thence I would make a big detour by Epsom to reach Leatherhead. I should have started at once, but my companion had been in active service, and he knew better than that. He made me ransack the house for a flask, which he filled with whiskey. Didn't fill it with water, filled it with whiskey. And we lined every available pocket with packets of biscuits and slices of meat. Then we crept out of the house and ran as quickly as we could down the ill-made road by which I had come overnight. The houses seemed deserted. In the road lay a group of 3 charred bodies, close together, struck dead by the heat ray, and here and there were things that people had dropped: a clock, a slipper, a silver spoon, and the like poor valuables. At the corner, turning up towards the post office, a little cart filled with boxes and furniture, and horseless, heeled over on a broken wheel, a cash box had been hastily smashed open and thrown under the debris. Except the lodge at the orphanage, which was still on fire, none of the houses had suffered very greatly here. The heat ray had shaved the chimney tops and passed. Yet, save ourselves, there did not seem to be a living soul on Maybury Hill. The majority of the inhabitants had escaped, I suppose, by the way of the old Woking Road, the road I had taken when I drove to Leatherhead. Or they had hidden. We went down the lane, by the body of the man in black, sodden now from the overnight hail, and broke into the woods at the foot of the hill. We pushed through these towards the railway without meeting a soul. The woods across the line were but the scarred and blackened ruins of woods, but for the most part the trees had fallen, but a certain proportion still stood, dismal grey stems with dark brown foliage instead of green. On our side, the fire had done no more than scorch the nearer trees. It had failed to secure its footing. In one place the woodmen had been at work on Saturday. Trees, felled and freshly trimmed, lay in a clearing, with heaps of sawdust by the sawing machine and its engine. Hard by was a temporary hut, deserted. There was not a breath of wind this morning, and everything was strangely still. Even the birds were hushed, and as we hurried along, I and an artilleryman talked in whispers and looked now and again over our shoulders. Once or twice we stopped to listen. After a time we drew near the road, and as we did so we heard the clatter of hoofs and saw through the tree stems 3 cavalry soldiers riding slowly towards Woking. We hailed them, and they halted while we hurried towards them. It was a lieutenant and a couple of privates of the 8th Hussars, with a stand like a theodolite, which the artilleryman told me was a heliograph. "You are the first men I've seen coming this way this morning," said the lieutenant. "What's brewing?" His voice and face were eager. The men behind him stared curiously. The artilleryman jumped down the bank into the road and saluted. "Gun destroyed last night, sir. Have been hiding, trying to rejoin battery, sir. You'll come in the side of the Martians, I expect, about half a mile along this road." "What the dickens are they like?" asked the lieutenant. "Giants in armor, sir. 100 feet high. 3 legs and a body like aluminium, with a mighty great head and a hood, sir." "Get out," said the lieutenant. "What confounded nonsense." "You'll see, sir. They carry a kind of a box, sir, that shoots fire and strikes you dead." "What do you mean? A gun?" "No, sir," said the artilleryman. The artilleryman began a vivid account of the heat ray. Halfway through, the lieutenant interrupted him and looked up at me. I was still standing on the bank by the side of the road. "It's perfectly true," I said. "Well," said the lieutenant, "I suppose it's my business to look into it. Look here," to the artilleryman. "We are detailed here clearing people out of all their houses. You better go along and report yourself to the Brigadier General, Marvin, and tell him all you know. He's at Weybridge. Know the way?" "I do," I said, as he turned the horse southward again. "Half a mile, you say?" said he. "At most," I answered, and pointed over the tree tops southward. He thanked me and rode on, and we saw them no more. Farther along, we came upon a group of 3 women and 2 children in the road, busy clearing out a laborer's cottage. They had got hold of a little hand truck and were piling it up with unclean-looking bundles and shabby furniture. They were all too assiduously engaged to talk to us as we passed. By Byfleet Station, we emerged from the pine trees and found the country calm and peaceful under the morning sunlight. We were far beyond the range of the heat ray there, had it not been for the silent desertion of some of the houses, the stirring movement of packing in others, and the knot of soldiers standing on the bridge over the railway and staring down the line towards Woking, the day would have seemed very like any other Sunday. Several farm wagons and carts were moving creakily along the road to Addleston, and suddenly through the gate of a field we saw, across a stretch of flat meadow, 6 12-pounders standing nearly at the equal distances pointing towards Woking. The gunners stood by the guns waiting, and the ammunition wagons were at a businesslike distance. The men stood almost as if under inspection. "That's good," said I. "They will get one fair shot at any rate." The artilleryman hesitated at the gate. "I shall go on," he said. Farther on towards Weybridge, just over the bridge, there were a number of men in white fatigue jackets throwing up a long rampart, and more guns behind. "It's bows and arrows against the lightning, anyhow," said the artilleryman. "They ain't seen that fire beam yet." The officers who were not actively engaged stood and stared over the treetops southwestward, and the men digging would stop every now and again to stare in the same direction. These guys don't have a freaking clue. Byfleet was in a tumult. People packing, and a score of hussars, some of them dismounted, some on horseback, were hunting them about. 3 or 4 black government wagons with crosses in white circles and an old omnibus words, and an old omnibus, among other vehicles, were being loaded in the village street. There were scores of people, most of them sufficiently sabbatical to have assumed their best clothes. Very proper. The soldiers were having the greatest difficulty in making them release the gravity of their position. We saw one shriveled old fellow with a huge box and a score of more of flower pots containing orchards, angrily expostulating with the corporal who would have leave them behind. I stopped and gripped his arm. "Do you know what's over there?" I said, pointing at the pine tops that hid the Martians. "Eh?" he said, turning. "I was explaining these is valuable." "Death!" I shouted. "Death is coming! Death!" And leaving him to digest that if he could, I hurried on after the artilleryman. At the corner I looked back. The soldier had left him, and he was still standing by his box, with the pots of orchids on the lid of it, and staring vaguely over the trees. Yep, that's a good place to stop. Another battle already. Fantastic. Let's see how we're doing. Let me switch over. Thank you all. So many troops. Fantastic. We'll just curse these guys right here. And off we go. Queen and Skunk with those epic artilleries. Just burning everyone down. And that was it. Man, you guys made those look like lunch meat. Good job. Alright, our winner today is gonna get Musketeer Scrolls, Garuki. I did not know you were here, Garuki. Welcome in. Alright, so we have an option. They're basically both the same. So we'll just go south, I guess. Oh yeah, this should be no problem at all. Knock him dead. Thank you for that, host, sir. Good morning, it's a holiday Monday, and I happen to be awake at 5:30. Well, good for you. fight the good fight. Absolutely. That was easy. Another domination. Nice sound of it. Thank you. I like that one. Alright. Let me find my place and we shall carry on. And we'll have to save the boss battle probably for next time, but we'll get this one at least out of our way. No one in Weybridge could tell us where the headquarters were established. The whole place was in such confusion as I had ever seen in any town before. Carts, carriages everywhere. The most astonishing miscellany of conveyances and horseflesh. The respectable inhabitants of the place, men in golf and boating costumes, wives prettily dressed, were packing, riverside loafers energetically helping, children excited, and, for the most part, highly delighted at the astonishment variation of their Sunday experiences. In the midst of it, all the worthy vicar and very pluckily holding an early celebration, and his bell was jangling out above the excitement. So obviously we've stumbled upon a proper, more to-do kind of little town, and they're just like, oh, isn't this fun? Yes, it is. Wonderful. Not a clue. I and the artilleryman seated at the step of the drinking fountain made a very passable meal upon what we had brought with us. Patrols of soldiers, here no longer hussars, but grenadiers in white, were warning people to move now or take refuge in their cellars as soon as the firing began. We saw as we crossed a railway bridge that a growing crowd of people had assembled in and about the railway station, and the swarming platform was piled with boxes and packages. The ordinary traffic had been stopped, I believe, in order to allow the passage of troops and guns to Chertsey, and I have heard since that a savage struggle occurred 4 places in the special trains that were put on at a later hour. We remained at Weybridge until midday, and at the hour we found ourselves at the place near Shepperton Lock, where the Wey and Thames join. Part of Purton Lock part of the time we spent helping 2 old women to pack a little cart. The Wey has a terrible mouth, and at this point boats are to be hired, and there was a ferry across the river. On the Shepperton side was an inn with a lawn, and beyond that the tower of Shepperton Church. It has been replaced by a spire, rose above the trees. Here we found an excited and noisy crowd of fugitives. As yet the flight had not grown to a panic, but there were already far more people than all the boats going to and fro could enable to cross. People began panting along under heavy burdens. One husband and wife were even carrying a small outhouse door between them. Interesting. With some of their household goods piled thereon. One man told us he meant to try and get away from Shepperton Station. So, can you imagine your desperation by saying, let's use the outhouse door to carry our stuff? Delicious. There was a lot of shouting, and one man was even jesting. The idea people seem to have here is that the Martians were simply formidable human beings who might attack and sack the town, to be certainly destroyed in the end. Every now and again people would glance nervously across the way at the meadows towards Chertsey, but everything over there was still. Across the Thames, except just where the boats landed, everything was quiet, in vivid contrast with the Surrey side. The people who landed there from the boats were tramping off down the lane. The big ferry boat had just made a journey. 3 or 4 soldiers stood on the lawn of the inn, staring and jesting at the fugitives without offering to help. The inn was closed, as it was now within prohibited hours. "What's that?" cried a boatman, and "Shut up, you fool," said a man near to a yelping dog. Then the sound came again, this time from the direction of Chertsey, a muffled thud, the sound of a gun. The fighting was beginning. Almost immediately, unseen, batteries across the river to our right, unseen because of the trees, took up the chorus, firing heavily, one after the other. A woman screamed. Everyone stood arrested by the sudden stir of battle, near us and yet invisible to us. Nothing was to be seen save flat meadows, cows feeding unconcernedly for the most part, and silvery pollard willows motionless in the warm sunlight. "The soldiers, stop 'em," said a woman beside me, doubtfully. A haziness rose over the treetops. Then suddenly we saw a rush of smoke far away up the river, a puff of smoke that jerked up into the air and hung, and forthwith the ground heaved under the foot with a heavy explosion that shook the air, smashing 2 or 3 windows in the houses near, and leaving us astonished. "Here they are," shouted a man in a blue jersey. "Yonder. Do you see them? Yonder." Quickly, one after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the armored Martians appeared, far away over the little trees, across the flat meadows that stretched towards Chertsey, and striding hurriedly towards the river. Little cowled figures that seemed at first going with a rolling motion, and as fast as flying birds. Then, advancing obliquely towards us, came a 5th. Their armored bodies glittered in the sun as they swept swiftly forward upon the guns, growing rapidly larger as they drew nearer. One of the extreme left, the remotest that is, flourished a huge case high in the air, and the ghostly, terrible heat ray I'd already seen on Friday night smote towards Chertsey and struck the town. At the sight of these strange, swift, and terrible creatures, the crowd near the water's edge seemed to be, for the moment, horror-struck. There was no screaming or shouting, but a silence. Then a hoarse murmur and a movement of feet, a splashing from the water. A man, too frightened to drop the portmanteau he had carried on his shoulder, swung round and sent me staggering with a blow from the corner of his burden. A woman thrust at me with her hand and rushed past me. I turned with the rush of the people, but I was not too terrified for thought. The terrible heat ray was in my mind. To get under water. That was it. "Get under water," I shouted, unheeded. I faced about again and rushed towards the approaching Martian, rushed right down the Gravefly beach and headlong into the water. Others did the same. A boatload of people putting back came leaping out as I rushed past. The stones under my feet were muddy and slippery, but the river was so low that I ran perhaps 20 feet, scarcely waist deep. Then, as the Martian towered overhead, scarcely a couple of 100 yards away, I flung myself downward under the surface. The splashes of the people in the boats leaping into the river sounded like thunderclaps in my ears. People were landing hastily on both sides of the river. But the Martian machine took more no notice for the moment of the people running this way than that of the man that would of the confusion of ants and a nest against which his foot was kicked. When, half suffocated, I raised my head above water, the Martian's hood pointed at the batteries that were still firing across the river, and as it advanced, it swung loose what must have been the generator of the heat ray. In another moment it was on the bank, and in a stride, wading halfway across, the knees of its foremost legs bent at the farther bank. And in another moment it had raised itself to its full height again, close to the village of Shepperton. Forthwith the 6th gun, which, unknown to anyone on the right bank, had been hidden behind the outskirts of that village, fired simultaneously. The sudden near concussion, last close upon first, made my heart jump. The monster was already raising the case, generating the heat ray, as its first shell burst 6 yards above the hood. I gave a cry of astonishment. I saw and thought nothing of the other 4 Martian monsters, My attention was riveted upon the nearest incident. Simultaneously, 2 other shells burst in the air near the body as the hood twisted round in time to receive, but not in time to dodge the 4th shell. The shell burst clean in the face of the thing. The HUD bulged, flashed, was whirled off in a dozen tattered fragments of red flesh and glittering metal. "Hit!" shouted I with something between a scream and a cheer. I heard answering shouts from the people in the water about me. I could have leaped out of the water with the momentary exultation. The decapitated colossus reeled like a drunken giant, but it did not fall over. It recovered its balance by a miracle and, no longer heeding its steps, and with the camera that fired up the heat ray now rigidly upheld, it reeled swiftly upon Shepperton. The living intelligence, the Martian within the hood, was slain, and splashed the 4 winds of heaven, and the thing was now a mere, intricate device of metal whirling to destruction. It drove along in a straight line, incapable of guidance. It struck the tower of Shepperton Church, smashing it down with as the impact of a battering ram might have done, swerved aside, blundered on, and collapsed with tremendous force into the river out of my sight. A violent explosion shook the air, and a spout of water, stream, mud, and shattered metal shot far up into the sky. As the camera of the heat ray hit the water, the latter had immediately flashed into steam. In another moment, a huge wave, like a muddy tidal bore, but almost scaldingly hot, came sweeping around the bend upstream. I saw people struggling shorewards and heard their screaming and shouting faintly above the seething and roar of the Martian's collapse. For a moment, I heeded nothing of the heat, forgot the patent need of self-preservation. I splashed through the tumultuous water, pushing aside a man in back to do so, until I could see round the bend. 6 deserted boats pitched aimlessly upon the confusion of the waves. The fallen Martian came into sight downstream, lying across the river, and for the most part submerged. Thick clouds of steam were pouring off the wreckage, and through the tumultuously whirling wisps I could see, intermittently and vaguely, the gigantic limbs churning the water and flinging a splash and spray of mud forth into the air. The tentacles swayed and struck the living arms, and, save for the helpless purposelessness of these movements, it was as if some wounded thing were struggling for its life amid the waves. Enormous quantities of a ruddy brown fluid were spurting up in noisy jets out of the machine. That's a good idea, yes. I'm so invested in what's going on right now, though. It's like... oops, sorry, just banged the microphone. It's like we finally made a blow, and it's working. Huzzah, as it were. My attention was diverted from the death flurry by a furious yelling, like that of the thing called a siren in our manufacturing towns. A man knee-deep near the towing path shouted inaudibly to me and pointed, looking back. I saw the other Martians advancing with gigantic strides down the riverbank from the direction of Chertsey. The Shepperton guns spoke, this time, unavailingly. At that, I ducked at once underwater, and, holding my breath until movement was an agony, blundered painfully ahead under the surface as long as I could. The water was in a tumult about me, and rapidly growing hotter. When for a moment I raised my head to take a breath, and throw the hair and water from my eyes, the steam was rising in a whirling white fog that at first hid the Martians altogether. The noise was deafening. Then I saw them dimly, colossal figures of gray, magnified by the mist. They had passed me by, and two were stooping over the frothing, tumultuous ruins of their comrade. The third and fourth stood beside him in the water. One perhaps 200 yards from me, the other towards Lalem. The generators of the heat rays waved high, and the hissing beams smote down this way and that. The air was full of sound, a deafening and confusing conflict of noises. The clangorous din of the Martians, the crash of the falling houses, the thud of the trees, fences, sheds flashing into flame, and the crackling and roaring of fire. Dense black smoke was leaping up to mingle with the steam from the river, and as the heat ray went to and fro over the weighbridge, its impact was marked by flashes of incandescent white that gave place at once to a smoky dance of lurid flames. The nearer houses still stood intact, awaiting their fate, shadowy, faint, and pallid in the steam, with the fire behind them going to and fro. For a moment, perhaps, I stood there, breast high in the almost boiling water, dumbfounded at my position, hopeless of escape. Through the reek, I could see the people who had been with me in the river scrambling out of the water through the reeds, like little frogs hurrying through the grass from the advance of a man, or running to and fro in utter dismay of the towing path. Then suddenly the white flashes of the heat ray came leaping towards me. The houses caved in as they dissolved at its touch, and darted out flames. The trees changed to fire with a roar. The ray flickered up and down the towing path, licking off people who ran this way and that, and came down to the water's edge, not 50 yards where I stood. It swept across the river to Shepperton, and the water in its track rose in a boiling wheel crested with steam. I turned shoreward. In another moment, the huge wave, well nigh at the boiling point, had rushed upon me. I screamed aloud and scalded, half-blinded, agonized, I staggered through the leaping, hissing water towards the shore. Had my foot stumbled, it would have been the end. I fell helplessly in full sight of the Martians upon the broad, bare gravelly spit that runs down to mark the angle of the Wey and Thames. I expected nothing but death. I have a dim memory of the foot of a Martian coming down within a score of yards of my head, driving straight into the loose gravel, whirling this way and that, and lifting again, of a long suspense, and then of the four carrying the debris of their comrade between them, now clear and presently faint through a veil of smoke, receding interminably, as it seemed to me, across a vast space of river and meadow. And then, very slowly, I realized that by a miracle I had escaped. And that concludes chapter 12. I'm just going back to when I saw the destruction of Weybridge and Shepperton. Yeah, I think that chapter title fits now that we understand what it means. Wow. What a turn of events. Well, what a thickening of events is more like it. He realizes that water could be a saving grace. For one thing, you're out of sight. And heat and water makes sense. May not be perfect. And with one of the cannons actually taking a direct hit onto the towering Martian, knocking it down and essentially destroying it, killing whoever's inside, thus brings about a massive, intense water boiling because of its heat cannon. Pretty cool stuff. Interesting H.G. Wells chose to tell a story in first person. Adds to the terror. It absolutely does. I would agree wholeheartedly. If you had done this in third person, you would get a sense, but you wouldn't feel like you were necessarily there in the midst of it. And I think that's what really makes it stand out in this case. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool indeed. I love it. So we read, we only read 4 chapters this time, but that's okay. We read 8 last time, but the first 8 were much shorter. And obviously a lead up to what's happening right now. There's a lot more detail in the past 4 chapters, describing to us the types of aliens and what they're doing, and kind of the to and fro of the events with the people and the soldiers. So it feels like the perspective of a wartime journalist. Right. Yes, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I love it though. It's so cool. This is a great book. We're only on... we finished page 73. Next time we'll start page 74. And there's 208 pages. I mean, there's no fluff at the end of this book. This is the end. It's like story and then the back cover. Like there's no extra added in here. It's just 100% story. And that's what I love about it. So yeah. We're about 30% of the way through, give or take. I mean, if anyone has read this book before or seen the movie, you have an idea of how it all ends. But I have a feeling this book is going to give us a much more interesting way of the ending coming about than the movie ever would. Which is to be expected, of course. You can't have a movie do that much justice, whereas a book would just, overtake that instantly. So whoa. So I'm going to pause it there as far as the H.G. Wells is concerned, but we are going to stick around so we can get our last battle in before we say adieu. But while I'm checking that, I want to see real quick. Aaron, are you still here in chat, sir? I don't remember if you're going live now or later or not at all. Force Hydrate, thank you so much. I don't think Aaron's here. That's okay. So Aaron Smith Audio is actually reading one of my books right now, which is thrilling to listen to because it's the first time it's been read, this particular book, live on stream. And I want to make sure that I don't miss it. He's normally streaming right about now, because I do my couple of hours and then he goes on. However, I do not see him yet, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all. But I'm going to keep my eye out. Just in case, because I would definitely like to go and visit him and continue listening to my book. And hopefully you'll join me. You don't have to, but it's always nice. The bottle with the green screen is fun. You think he's prepping? Okay. Yes. I like to use things that mess with the green screen because why not? It's fun. If you can't have fun with it, then, what are you doing? Looks like there's no bottle at all. Exactly. A side note, I don't normally talk about this on stream, but I want to let people know that I do have a website for which I help people local and, well, anywhere really, with personal money management. Now, I say that because there's this big myth that talking about money is a no-no. And we've been given this mindset that it's a FUBAR taboo subject and you only talk about it with like one person, and probably a person that can't even help you that much. But I'm trying to break through that barrier. So if you ever find yourself just thinking, you know what, I wish I had more money at the end of the month than month at the end of my money, or you're stressing about getting bills paid, and you just want to get a grip on the day-to-day, that's what I do. I've helped people younger than me. I'm 36. I've helped people much older than me, singles and couples. And I can say with certainty that everybody that I have helped has always been super thankful because of the insight that I've been able to give and just the general organization. I don't find a money tree that money grows on, because that's not a thing. But I do give them a sense of hope and kind of a path forward. And so anyway, if you look at that website, moneyhandle.com, you'll see a little bit more about what I'm talking about. If at any point in time you ever feel like, hey, you know what, I'd like to learn more, or yeah, let's meet and let's talk, I'd be more than happy to. It's a free service that I offer. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And if we do talk, I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about my story, about my wife and I, and how we went from the ditch to where we are now. And so yeah, it's driven from a personal need, and it's something that's not taught in school. You don't hear about it anywhere else. So I try and teach it as much as I can. So anyway, that's that. Just wanted to throw it out there, just in case, because I don't usually get the opportunity to broadcast that very often. I'm rechecking Twitch to see if Aaron is live. He is not yet. I'm going to send him a quick message, actually. Alright, I just sent him a quick chat on Discord. We'll see if he replies. Oh, he is replying. Right, meow. He is typing as I speak. Oh, not for 2 hours. So never mind, we won't be raiding Aaron. Just kidding. That's late for him. That's like midnight for him. I thought he was not trying to go live that late, but okay, well, that's fine. Alright, let's see how we're doing on Stream Raiders. We've got a minute left. We got lots of units. This should be easy peasy. Two more hours of war. I've got work to catch up on, so I'm going to say adieu. Thank you for stopping by, David. It's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you for the reading. Absolutely. Loved it. I can't wait to read more next week. I really can. It's going to be awesome. Love it. All right. That's my pleasure, Queen. You know, I say it all the time. I'm going to keep saying it. These Sunday afternoons hanging out with y'all is my favorite time of the week. And I'm going to hop over to the Stream Raiders. Going to see if my page refreshes with any more troops, just so you can get your scroll counts. Alright. Let's put a curse on these guys and go for it. This will be over in a moment. These guys didn't stand a chance. Uh-oh. They got the football. Soccer ball. Whatever. Depends where you're from. Get him. Punch, punch. Why are we all standing around? I don't get it. There must be something that forces these guys to just hang out and not move, and I have no idea what it is. Do they have to cross this blue line right here first? I wonder. I don't know. There we go. It's all over. Good job, everybody. We're gonna get 3 winners here. Bomber, healer, and gold. Queen gets the gold. Kevo gets the bomber. And Magma Zone gets the healer. Good job. And we will endure our boss battle next time. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me check now to see who is on, so we can go do a quick raid-a-roo. From our USG team, Ikakoro is live, but he is eating lunch. Of course, he's eating lunch. You know what? I know what we're gonna do. I made some new friends a little while ago called Here There Be Monsters. They're a fun husband and wife couple, and they're just great people. So we're gonna go raid them instead. I would like to send you to Ikakoro, but I don't want to send you to a place where there's no one sitting there. Aranel knows who I'm talking about, absolutely. So let me get the Here There Be Monsters. Alright, there we go. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today, for listening to this read. I appreciate you all dearly. I can't wait to see you all later and to come back next week for some more fun. Don't forget to get in the Discord. Don't forget to put in your calendar the book club, September 25th, 6 p.m. Central Time. And I will see you all next time. Take care.
Atkinson 1020 raided the stream with 9 viewers.
How's it going? What were you up to today, Atkinson? Hello. Junior says 8. Uh-oh. Well, let's give it a shot then. Hello, Aranel. Queen Azalis. Yeah, well, we can go look real quick. He'll probably just tell me I can't buy it yet. Oh, War